testify to the prophethood of his most beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My brothers and sisters, believers that are oppressed teach believers that have everything good very important lessons about faith. Believers that are oppressed, that are true in their conviction to Allah Azza wa Jalla, they teach us many lessons about what real faith is. And one of the powerful lessons I've seen it in many videos and with many different parts of the ummah when they go through oppression. But I think the past 169 days in Gaza particularly, from the very first day of the genocide until today, there's been a phrase that the people that are oppressed, that they say over and over and over, seeking Allah Azza wa Jalla's help. And I didn't know where this phrase came from until I was wondering, why do they say this phrase? Why this sentence? Why this term? And the phrase was, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. You will see people with their children blown up in their hands saying, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. You will see a mother walking out of her house with everything lost out of the rubble, and she'll say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. You'll see people starving with no food, their children dying of starvation. They say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Every video, every clip, every highlight, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. And subhanAllah, I was moved by why this phrase? Why do they say this phrase? Where did this phrase come from? And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he actually tells us in Sahih Bukhari, he says this phrase was said twice by two individuals. I'll try to talk about both stories, but the first time it was said by our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was a young man, and his people decided, because he destroyed their idols, they decided to punish him. And his punishment was that they built a massive fire that they were going to throw him into it. And they couldn't just throw him in, they had to build a catapult to put him into it and launch him into the fire. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was a fata, relatively young man. Maybe a teen, maybe a little bit older. But he was relatively young. And when he was put into the catapult, and he was launched into the fire, on his way there's a hadith, an authentic hadith that mentions that the angel Jibreel alayhi salam came to Ibrahim in mid-flight, in the middle of the air. And Jibreel alayhi salam tells Ibrahim alayhi salam, it looks like you need help, young man. Of course, Jibreel alayhi salam, 600 wings, they brought out the horizon. He tells him, it looks like you need some help. I'm here to help you. Allah sent me to help you. And Ibrahim alayhi salam told Jibreel, I don't need your help. No thank you. He said, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is enough, and He's the best helper. And Ibrahim alayhi salam lands in the fire, and of course we know Allah turned the fire into like a pool. Coolness and ease on Ibrahim alayhi salam. The second time it was said was by, in the Quran, as it's mentioned in the Quran, the Prophet and the companions. When they too went through a very difficult time after the battle of Uhud, the Prophet had lost, of course, his uncle and many great companions. The Muslims were very hurt. It was a devastating time. They had many shuhada. And when they got back to Medina, even the Prophet was bleeding profusely from his own wounds. And they were in such hurt because they've been severely wounded as a community and individually. And as soon as they got back to Medina, they heard the people say, Inna an-nasa qad jama'u lakum. They heard the people say, actually the Meccans are coming back to destroy you. So the Muslims had to recalibrate right away and come right out to meet them. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says that they said, فَقَالُوا, when they had to do that, they said, Hasbunallah, Allah is enough, wa ni'mal wakeel, and He's the best helper. And subhanAllah, this phrase is very important. When we're going through hard times, difficult times, this is the worst of calamity, but when you're going through difficult things, you say, look, Allah is enough. There's nothing else other than Allah. He is enough. And He is the best, and wakeel means the most trusted protector, the most trusted help. And so I think as they are oppressed saying those words and they have that conviction, I think it's a reminder to us, it's our job as much as possible, as much as we can, that we help alleviate their oppression. Right? The famous hadith, the Prophet said, every human, on the day of judgment, Allah will ask him, Ya ibn Adam, if you see somebody hungry, you'll be asked. On the day of judgment, hadith al-Bukhari, our job is to just do something, right? Allah will say on the day of judgment, Ya ibn Adam, I was hungry and you didn't feed me. And the servant will say on the day of judgment, Ya Allah, how can I feed you? You're the Lord of the universe. I can't feed you. He said, no, you heard of my abd so-and-so that was hungry. You should have fed him. And if you had fed him, you would have seen me. It's an important reminder. We do what we can. Ya ibn Adam, I was thirsty and you didn't give me water. Like, wait, why didn't you give me water? Why didn't you do your part? And he said, Ya Allah, you're Allah. How can I give you water? Allah says, my servant so-and-so was thirsty, and you do. So you should have gave him water, and if you gave him water, you would have found me. What Allah expects of us on the day of judgment is we did our part. Whatever we could, whatever we can to feed or drink, whoever is in need, even the most basic things, our job is to do our part. Whatever it is. So subhanAllah, if it's your neighbor, if it's somebody else around the world, if it's whoever it may be, our job is to do our part to alleviate their suffering as they show their iman in their patience through oppression. That's the role that the ummah plays, inshallah. And we ask Allah to alleviate the suffering of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah if we can make small brahs. We ask Allah to bring victory and aid to all of the believers around the world, all of the oppressed around the world. We ask Allah that we can be of those that alleviate the suffering and oppression of any son of Adam around the world through our faith and our intention. بإذن الله. بارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم.